Hi, my name is McKenna Kirchhoff, and I am here today with Chandra Spangler for our Angler Journeys podcast, and she is here to tell us a little bit about her Fire in the Belly. So, before we get started, Chandra, will you just give us a brief introduction of who you are, what you're studying, your business, etc.?
Yeah, so I'm Chandra, obviously, as you said, and I'm an agricultural and environmental sciences communication major. I'm a senior, so I'll be graduating this May, and I currently have a social media content creation and consulting business called Meadows Marketing.
Awesome. I'm so excited. So we're going to jump right in, and I want to just hear about your story. Kind of where did you get started thinking about marketing as something that you wanted to pursue? And tell us just where that story began.
Right, so I guess there's nothing super cute about my journey to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and the way I chose my major. In high school, I literally had no clue what I was going to do, and I had a classmate say, you know what, Chandra, I think you should just do ad communication. I think that would really suit you. And from that day forward, I decided that day, you know what, I'll just do that, and so that's what I chose. And then came here, just kind of hung out my first year. And then the summer of COVID, so June of 2020, I started working as a communication student worker at the Institute of Ag and Natural Resources. And that was a virtual work from home job, which was really great for me to kind of learn how to be responsible for my tasks and understand workflows, but also gain a lot of skills in writing news releases and designing social media posts, creating e-newsletters, creating student spotlights and faculty spotlights. So it really gave me a whole 360 view of the communication space, I feel like.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you were in Memphis over the summer. So tell us, did that help with kind of getting you interested in marketing too? I mean, that was obviously a really cool experience. It's a little bit far from home, but awesome. Yeah, tell us about that.
Right. So my experience in INR really set me up well to go to Memphis. INR kind of gave me a lot of background information. I worked at Helena Agri Enterprises in Memphis, and so INR kind of gave me a lot of that background information on crops to be able to understand that and communicate it to our audiences better. So yeah, going to Memphis helped immensely. I really got to see a deeper dive into how large businesses utilize marketing and communications both on a local scale, a regional scale, and then also a national scale. Some projects that I was involved in included national marketing, and it was creating taglines for brands and really being involved in that branding process. So that part of it was really amazing for me to be a part of and just get my hands on the camera and be in charge of bringing those brands to life. So
Yeah, absolutely. So when was the first time you thought about actually doing this, as a freelance, working with people? What was that first, I guess, tell us when that kind of happened.
Right, so my junior year, I was in the kind of Intro to Entrepreneurship Angler 101 class, the classic class that everyone takes. And there was a pitch contest coming up, and Angler always has this fun thing about making contests as wild as possible. So this one happened to be on the Shields Ferris wheel, and I wasn't going to do it. It was mentioned in class, but pitching was not for me. However, I was coerced like 3 or 4 days before to do it, so I ended up applying and did it, but I was kind of struggling to think of like what an idea would be for it, and so I decided to just take something I already knew and loved doing, which was communications, and thought, well, if I can do it for INR, surely I can do it for other clients. No big deal. So I pitched that idea, and then it was kind of something I just had in the back of my mind. I didn't really think about it again. I mean, I would think about it, but it wasn't something that I was going to act on or really do anything with. And then the spring semester rolled around, and there was a angler scholarship contest. And of course, they had another pitch for a business
As
there.
we do.
Yes.
All the time.
Can never get away without pitching.
No.
So that one was really pitching a business idea as well. And I'd kind of decided, well, we'll let this be the determining factor. If I win money off this scholarship, a reasonable amount for me to be able to kind of get this going, then I will. And if I don't, then I just won't launch it. Like, this will kind of be the determining thing. Long story short, I ended up deciding to launch it. So I really spent some time with the wonderful Dave Lamb towards the end of the spring semester, kind of pitching my idea and finding ways to kind of bring it to life. I think he kind of helped me jump off the cliff before I was ready, but I don't think I would have started unless I just dove into it and didn't really know what I was doing. So looking back, I think that was probably the best choice for myself. And then throughout the summer, while I was working in Memphis, I was also kind of building up my branding and creating my logo and just kind of seeing what potential clients could be, all of that stuff. And then it was kind of wild. I got back from Memphis on a Friday. I drove back, and then the Angler trek was, I think we left early in the morning on like Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, and I got to sit next to you, and I remember you just like started talking to me about all of these things that you were working on, and it was so fun because we hadn't seen each other all summer.
Yeah.
And so like the last I heard, I didn't even honestly really know about this business, and then you came with all of this energy at like 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us where were you after the summer? Yeah, go back into that.
Yeah, so really that Friday through Tuesday, preparing for that trek, I felt like, this is a great opportunity for me to network, really dig my feet in, pitch the idea. And so I didn't feel like I could do that properly without having like a website or business cards or something tangible for people to see. So I spent one day just like spitting out some branding and figuring that out. And then I spent the next day, I think I sat on my couch for probably like 10 hours.
Oh my goodness.
And just did a website.
Right.
Figured that all out, and then hurried up later that night, created some business cards, and tried to get those printed out before the trek. So,
oh my
yeah,
gosh. That's insane.
That's kind of how the whole business has gone, is just to jump in and do it. Yeah.
You did. You really just jumped in. And for those of you that don't maybe know, our Angler trek, we go this past year. We went across Nebraska, and we got to meet like, I don't know, do you remember how many entrepreneurs?
Over 25. So
yeah, it was a lot.
Business owners, yeah.
So a good opportunity.
Right.
I also was in the boat of like, I need to meet everyone, and I need to know everything, and I need to be so ready to meet all these people. Well, the benefits of trek weren't probably all that I imagined in my own plans. I benefited so much in different ways. But I was like, I need to work the whole time. And it sounded like you were kind of in the same boat as we were sitting next to each other. There was a lot of energy in that morning going into it. But yeah, so after Trek and that powerful 3-4 days that we had, what was your semester like? Because I know that a lot of people maybe have the idea that entrepreneurship, when you launch, it just is, this constant increase of like productivity, and you just build. Mm-hmm. Their reality might be a little different. And so, yeah, where does your story go of this last semester?
Yeah, so I was working, I came back from Memphis, had like a week off, and then I was working again at INR for my 20 hours a week. And then I was also working the weekends at Olive Garden, and then still trying to get this business going, get that launched between homework and social life. And it kind of got to the point where my business wasn't going to grow because I simply didn't have the energy really to put into it. And it also got to the point where everything just became so overwhelming. I felt like I had this like passion to really like get this business going, this itch really, but I couldn't scratch the itch because I was so overwhelmed by doing all these other things. It was actually like immobilizing. It got to the point where, I didn't really share this with anyone, but I'd wake up sometimes in the morning and be like so overwhelmed I didn't even want to get out of bed, or it got to the point where I would talk to roommates or friends and I just couldn't be present in conversations. I felt like I was kind of got to a zombie point, honestly. And so that was really tough. And, I think I got really frustrated with my business because I didn't have the time and energy to put into it. And I think other people really started to see that overwhelm and frustration. I think the biggest kind of impactful moment for me last semester was I was sitting in a class, and after class, a teacher had pulled me aside and said, are you okay? Like, how are you doing? Because the person that you are, like, you're just not as happy and bubbly and bright as you were in class before. I've just really noticed like something's changed, so I just want to make sure you're okay. And of course, kind of that, of course I'm okay, like no worries, don't worry about me. And then it might not even have been a week later, I had another important mentor in my life tell me that they felt like they kind of lost who I was last semester, and they saw me as this bright, amazing, fun, happy person. And they said that like that just wasn't me anymore. Wow. And they really missed the old me. And so I think I remember that day, like that was just kind of like the turning point of like something has to give. So I went home and just really thought about like what can I give to make myself better, my life better, my business better, like things I actually want to do better.
Yeah, and those are really like tough things to hear when you're in the midst of crazy cramming everything, constantly going, like being told that you're not the same when you knew, like I knew
for sure, yeah.
But it's you just want to keep going and like no, everything's fine, and so being told that like hey, by people that you look up to, it's like wow, that's hard. Was that what were your emotions when you were told that? Like what was your reaction? Was it denial or was it like fear? I don't know. What was that like?
I think like instant breakdown. I remember the first one, it was just kind of like, okay, well, maybe I need to go home and digest this and think about this more, which I did. But then the second one, it was to the point of like choking back tears just because I knew the realities myself. But you always kind of try to ignore those things, tell yourself you're okay, and like you need to be okay and you need to keep going. But I don't think if you acknowledge those things, like you won't be okay and you won't be able to keep going.
Right. And keeping going in the same pace that you were wasn't healthy. So pivoting, you had mentioned to me the quote, saying yes to something, you heard this in a podcast, right? Saying yes to something means you're saying no to something else. So what, that, I don't even remember what podcast that was that you mentioned, but.
It's a Mindset Mentor with Rob Dial, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And so, hearing that, what, how did that help you pivot?
Yeah, so it gotten to the point shortly after the conversations I had with the two professors, I decided to just take a couple weeks off of INR, really just take time to reflect on that. And then it got to the point where I had decided it would just be best for me to step away from INR and then work on my business while still working at Olive Garden. And so I was doing that. I was working like 4 days a week at Olive Garden and working on my business, but I still was feeling like this frustration, like I still didn't have enough time to work on my business. And so I was driving along in my car one day listening to the podcast, and one of the lines Rob said was, when you say yes to something, you always say no to something else. And vice versa, when you say no to something, you say yes to something else. And so that really got me thinking, like, you know what, if I just said no to working at Olive Garden, like I could say yes to my business and really say yes to spending more time with my clients and on their projects, as well as really growing my business, because I was at a stagnant point and really just didn't have that creative flow of how I can leverage that and build upon that. And so, ever since I've had the mindset of what can I say yes to and what can I say no to and what can I say no to say yes to, I've really seen growth in my business just in the past couple of weeks. So it's been great.
That's amazing. And I love it because you can be in the midst of like super hard stuff. And I'm so thankful for this program because Engler for me has been the support that I needed when, not that I didn't have other support, but like they showed up in ways that I didn't know I needed people to show up in my life. So it sounds like just listening to the podcast and being able to really think about your life and your priorities made that huge impact for you. So now we got all caught up with your story, and now we're kind of back to where are you at now with your business? I know there's some rebranding literally happening as we speak this week, which is crazy and exciting. Tell us, kind of I want to hear both sides of like what was the brand before, what was your idea of that before and now, and really why did you feel a need to change?
Right. So when I started this business concept back in the summer and into August, the main service that I really wanted to offer was consulting for people. And so I wanted to have that in my name. So that's why I chose so my name was Meraki Consulting Services, and so that consulting was there. And then Meraki is actually a Greek word that means to put yourself in what you love, into like yourself and what you do. And so I felt like that was just a word that described me really well. And then especially with like my clients, I'm the only person in my business, so I would be putting my creativity and my love into their projects. So that's kind of why I chose that. And then I decided to rebrand as I talked to a few like CEOs and business mentors, etc. And they had kind of talked about how Rocky's just not as memorable. It's kind of a saturated word in the business market. And then that consulting piece is kind of confusing for others. So I really was trying to decide. And Meraki has a very, my current branding has a very organic feel. It's all greens, it's tans, which I love. That's something that just, I don't know, very soul warming, I guess, for me. And I kind of want to be that calm in the storm of marketing. So then when I was rebranding, I really wanted to stick to that nature-y, organic feel while still being able to target the businesses that I wanted to. And so my current target market that I'm trying to target is like medical offices like dentists, chiropractors, country clubs, golf courses, those kinds of businesses. And so I wanted it to be something that was clean and crisp and professional, but also something that still resonated with myself in that way of nature.
Yeah.
And so I really got to thinking and brainstorming with others and really talking about how everything really kind of goes back to the root of things. And so, and I kept getting hung up on this word meadow.
Okay.
Consistently, just every time I was branding, like this word meadow just came into my mind. And that's just something I like. The hay meadows is just something I think about that calms me. Is the calm in the storm. I remember during high school, I would always take the four-wheeler out, the summer night sunsets, just going on a trail road, looking over and seeing the meadows and just how gorgeous that was, how calming it was, and just how fulfilling it was to me. And so that word just kept coming back. And then as I thought further about meadows, you really start to realize what a diverse ecosystem it is. I mean, it's got your native grasses, your wildflowers, your habitats for others. And so it really, like, truly is the root of ecosystem and what helps ecosystems thrive and provide so much for them. And so that's kind of where I was going when I did Bright Meadows marketing, is that we are the root of the ecosystem, but also it kind of relates to like a chiropractor's office. The spine is literally like the root of the body.
That's awesome.
When you're golfing, you're still connecting with nature somehow.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was going in that direction. And then Bright, just when you think about the meadows and the way that makes you feel afterwards, you just feel so
and when they're lit up by the golden hour, seriously, it's so beautiful. I literally have it's so amazing to me that like Bright Meadows marketing is what you are, because when you told me that, it hit home so hard, because I have this one, like my favorite place in the whole world, with this little meadow, and when it's hit by the golden hour, it lights the trees up, but it lights all the grass and you can see all the little bugs, and so that brings me joy. And I have nothing to do with your business, but it's just, it really is a beautiful picture, and simply in 3 words, you're painting the picture of clarity and serenity in nature, and like you're adding your marketing aspect to that.
Right.
So.
And like essentially clarity is what I want to provide business owners and businesses and their marketing and more. So that kind of fits in there too.
That's so awesome. I love it. You've been doing this rebranding pretty quickly, right? I mean, that's been the last couple weeks, correct? Or has it been longer than that?
Really just the past couple of days I've really been hitting the ground running.
I love it.
Yeah, the Angler community has been great. We've done a lot of just private chatting, brainstorming sessions, kitchen table brainstorm sessions. And so
That's
when
so
we
awesome.
gather a few people around the table and start screaming out ideas,
Chit-chatting.
come a long ways, yeah.
There's a lot of ideas in this building.
Right.
So what has been the most challenging part for you in deciding like how to rebrand? Maybe that's just a key point, or maybe what's a tip that you've learned through this process that you'd like to share?
Right. I think the biggest thing would be a tip. I guess, to me, my brand makes sense beforehand, the Meraki consulting service. But it really didn't make sense to a lot of other people. And with branding, I realized if it doesn't make sense to other people, it doesn't matter. Like, if it makes sense to me, that's amazing. But if it doesn't make sense to other people, it simply doesn't matter. And that's with any piece of marketing material, is if it doesn't make sense to people, they're not going to take the time to learn it, And so I think that's been the biggest thing, is to really go back to the basics, simplify things, and just make sure that you aren't overthinking it or overcomplicating it. It really just needs to be simple, understandable, and memorable.
Wow. That's such good advice, because I know it's something that feels like it should be so simple and easy, because it's like, well, what am I doing? What's my last name? And sometimes that works perfectly. A name, location, whatever. But I've even found myself in the midst of like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I want to brand, but making it make sense to your audience, your customers is, that is really good advice, because they're the ones that it needs to appeal to.
Well, and that's kind of the next piece too, is really thinking about your target audiences and their intent and interactions with your brand. What's that going to look like? That can really guide a lot of your branding and how you present yourself as well, and how they're going to react and resonate with that.
Wow, that's awesome. Anything that you feel like you've really picked up throughout the course of your journey figuring out that marketing was interesting to you and that you really enjoyed? I mean, seriously, there are so many like nuances and little different areas that you get to work on. But is there anything that you feel like you can give back to our audience on tips that you learned along the way, things that you would like to tell people to keep in mind as you're going through the challenges and the highs and lows of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just really learning that work-life balance and understanding the balancing act. For a while, things got really muddy to the point where I wasn't paying attention to family and friends and the things that really mattered to me, and instead it was just working, and that was becoming unfulfilling to me. So I think it's really just kind of taking the unbalanced and figuring out how you can balance it all, and really being mindful about what percentages of your time you're allocating to different places. I've noticed ever since I've kind of been more mindful about the time I'm spending with my family and my friends, as well as my business and my schooling, I've become a lot more present, and my cup gets filled a lot more than what it was before, where before all of that felt like a chore. Now I can really be present and really just soak it in and fill my cup with it.
Oh, I love that. And being able to change your priorities around is so... It's just so, like, well, once you figure out what they are, it's like, oh, I wasn't doing this before, and then you really get to learn there. So my last question for you, what has kept your fire in the belly alive throughout this journey?
Yeah, it's actually been pretty tough. There have been a lot of days where I've decided, like, maybe this isn't for me, and I should just find something else to do. But I think the thing that really keeps me going is just forming connections with others who kind of continue to fuel that fire with their ideas, with their excitement for me, and kind of their reinforcement that what I'm doing is going to have an impact once I get it figured out. And so I think that's kind of the biggest thing that keeps me going when it feels like the embers are the only thing burning.
They're really, really low.
Yeah,
I get that. Those relationships, man, they are so valuable. Like, we are just designed to be in a relationship with people. So getting to do that and have that support is so amazing. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was so fun. And you know what? This is going to be, by the time this is out, you will be launched, right?
We should be. Yeah, hopefully.
Within a few days.
So
tell us really quick before we end, where can people find you? What's your website. And we will also link these in the description if they happen to be edited between now and then. But yeah, where can we find you?
Right. So my domain will need to change, but it will be brightmeadowsmarketing.com. You can find me on Instagram at Bright Meadows Marketing and Facebook as well, Bright Meadows Marketing. And those are my 2 platforms for now. So yeah, I'll be building out on those.
Awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me today.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, we will see you next time on Fire in the Belly podcast.